Welcome to the Agronomy and Farm Management Podcast. I'm Amanda.
And I'm Elizabeth. Thanks for joining us today.
Well, we're back with the Agronomy and Farm Management Podcast, continuing to interview farmers here in Ohio, and we've got Geoff Mavis. We're in Fayette County today talking with him, and he's been farming for a few more years than our previous guest, Aaron. He was 31, so we've got some interesting stuff for Geoff here to share with us today. He's dipped his hands into several different things, and I'm excited to talk to him about that. So, Geoff, why don't you tell us a little bit about your farming experience?
Well, thank you, man. It's a privilege to be here. Well, I've been farming longer than Aaron's been around, but I started in 1977 full-time, and it's a family farm. It's been in family since 1840. I'm the sixth generation, and my son, who's doing most of the work now, will be the seventh, and then he has a grandson who's pretty interested. We're just north of Bloomingburg in Fayette County here, and we have about 943 acres we farm. All grain farm, and we've trying a new things down the road, but basically we've kept with corn and soybeans and wheat and some hay over the years.
Very cool. And you said 1840, so you guys have that sesquicentennial designation.
Yeah, the ODA has that designation now. It used to be Century Farm and I think Bicentennial, and they threw that 175 in there, so we got that certificate. Yeah, and it's had livestock over the years, and but it's the same block that was started out in 1840.
And so you mentioned that your son is doing a lot of the work now, so right. You guys have been working on farm transition a little bit.
Right, yes. He's been helping the last 5 years. He was a welder and he'd help off and on, but he moved down to the farm. We have a home on the farm besides where I live, and he and his family live there, and so he started helping about 5 years ago. Now he's doing most all the physical tractor work. So after I inherited the land about a year ago, 2018 fall, started on a transition plan, and that's a lot due to motivation from you guys at Extension, I have to say, because you have a great team promoting, helping farmers with transition and so forth. So I got information there, and I changed my will, and I had a trust put in place. So for right now, that's the basic transition I have in place right now. And then we're working on a management plan together for my son and me. And we've formed an LLC, and we're going to form an equipment LLC soon. We have an operating LLC.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so your farm's now been passed down for quite a few generations.
Right.
What are some of the things you think your family's done that's set you guys up for that long-term success?
Oh, that's a great question. One of the great things is we've never had any debt, really, and they were able to keep this going without getting into borrowing money. So that's helped me out a lot. There was always somebody interested in the farm, whether it was my grandmother inherited it, and she had it for about 40 years. And I worked for her, but she let me grow and develop there, knowing I liked farming. And then my mother did the same thing. So I think there's been a desire to honor farming and not just development, even though we have a lot of road frontage there. So I've been lucky there. Yeah.
And I think one thing that came out in talking with you before is you do have a passion for agriculture, and because of that maybe is why you put some land into the farmland preservation program.
Oh yes, you're right. I've always thought that was a good idea to preserve farmland, and I think the ODA goes about it the right way on the point system. They really want to preserve valuable farmland that isn't already surrounded by development, or they have a lot of good criteria. So I felt like if I ever was able to own this land, which I do now, I would like to preserve it down the road with the ODA's plan and sell the development rights, which is a nice benefit to the monetary, if you qualify, the money that you can get. And so I ran this by both my son and daughter, and they thought it was a good idea. we've talked about over the years. So I did half the farm last year, and it got approved last summer by the Preservation Board, and I just a week ago entered the other half. And so the whole farm hopefully will be preserved if everything passes here.
Oh, that's incredible, really, to take that step. It's important as we continue to lose farmland, and like you mentioned, valuable farmland too.
Yeah, especially in this part of the state, as we see, eventually Columbus is going to continue to sprawl out this far. So this is really a very valuable part of Ohio to try to keep it near to its rural roots.
I've always felt that way, and when I'd see things developing in the 90s, around Columbus, and be aware of that. People have right to develop their farmland, but it's going to be a scarce commodity, I think, like you said, there's still sprawl going on. And it's good land, good ground.
Yeah, I know around where I live, I kind of feel pretty old when I'm driving around and I say, when I was growing up, that was farmland. But it's crazy how
old,
quickly that can change. I'm starting to sound like my grandma.
Yeah, things go so fast, yeah. The recession slowed things down a bit, but then it seems like it's picking up.
It does feel like it's picking back up again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think it's just a result of how America was developed. We came over and we had to farm to survive, and then it just, that's where we settled, and it grew from there.
Mm-hmm.
I just think, if we could restructure the way we founded America, then we could preserve some of that farmland. You just have to think, like Columbus, especially with the two rivers there, that had to be really fertile ground, I'd think.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, around the surrounding areas we still farm, it is, so.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, you sort of think about the national parks. People thought ahead on the valuable resource they had for many reasons, and we got to think ahead, I believe. And I think the ODA's done a great job on that. So they've quite a process you have to go through. So.
Yeah.
So to keep your farm sustainable over the years, you've tried a lot of different things. Would you like to talk about some of the different conservation practices or things like that you've tested out?
Well, we're all no-till now, and we've put waterways in, and we have a mile of Paint Creek running through us, so we have kind of low ground that we have to look out for, and it seems to be more prone to flooding these days, and of course, I think we've all seen heavier rain, and so we're getting erosion there, and we would ideally like to have a cover crop on all year round, but we've had some problems getting things established and working right during the planning process and all this, but we're getting there, we think, but that would help, I believe. And so we have planted trees along the creek and some other things, and I felt like a lot of the government programs, CREP and CRP, and they don't pay as much as maybe if you made off of corn and soybeans in a great year, but they do have a life insurance policy, and they definitely help with these flooded areas, slow down the water coming out of bank. So I think there's a lot of good programs, and I've been in those, and I still am in those. So
I think that's a great approach. We've seen for many years trees coming out of fence lines and tearing off fence lines, and I know you've really tried to help build wildlife habitat on your farm, it's kind of a different approach than what some of us are taking.
Well, I like to see it, and especially when we were working, you could take a little break and walk down the creek, and if you had the right habitat, you could see, pheasants, and fence rows will promote quail. You can see hawks, different types of hawks flying over with the water in the grassy areas, and we welcome every wildlife down there. They haven't really bothered us. So
I think it's here in Fayette County that they've really targeted bobwhite quail. Is there a small area? I think so. I'm trying to remember from one of the areas we've hunted pheasants in the past, but a very targeted area where they've worked with landowners to create a continuous habitat for bobwhite quail, and they've seen some growth there. It just unfortunately is isolated, But yeah.
Well, they're getting around to my farm because I hadn't seen them until a few years ago, and there's quail showing up there. But we don't have pheasants like we did, and I'm not quite sure I know that we had some harsh winters. We're not having one this year, but haven't had them for about 3 or 4 years, really. So I don't know why.
Well, do you want to talk about some of the technology that you guys have adopted over the years?
Sure. It's thanks to my son we've had the last 5 years a real leap in technology, because I've gone from hauling wagons to Cargill to, we have a semi now and so forth. But as far as technology, we've got a little wider equipment, but like on our planter, we have clutch control where you so you don't overplant. We don't have the individual units going off, but that's been nice where you don't overplant. Same with the sprayer, kind of the same thing. We have a self-propelled sprayer we just got that the swath control that we have on that will shut off, automatically on your end row, so you don't overspray. Of course, they go all off on the GPS system, and my son knows how to operate that stuff. And at first, years ago, I thought it was kind of a convenience thing, but it really is an efficient thing. If you can get carried away on buying these things, but it's really proven to help us a lot. Those particular things we've done.
Those are great technologies. I know when people are asking what's the first thing I should adopt, and those are usually the first ones I point out, because in Ohio we're not dealing with those nice square fields that a lot of our western neighbors are.
Point. That's exactly right.
We see some big efficiency gains being able to not overplant or even having skips on your point rows. That makes a huge difference.
That's, That's exactly. You learned hard before I did. But,
every once in a while I know a thing or two.
That's so true, especially because our fields are all jagged and next to open ditch and creek, and it is really a big help. Yeah, you don't realize, I think, how much you save spraying and seeds and so forth.
Yeah. And it doesn't help that it looks nicer.
Yeah, that is true. Much nicer than when I planted, that's for sure.
So you said that you're going to be adding wheat, mainly for the straw, and hay back into the rotation at a time when we see a lot of farmers pulling that out.
I know, and we're just thinking about this now. Hay is we don't know hay that well. I would grow some when I was doing some organic, just to kind of bale it off and have some nitrogen for the corn, but it may be primarily straw the more we're talking about it, because I think that's a little bit easier for us to get into. And then we can get it off and double crop and maybe help the rotation and also make some money that way. I think straw right now is better than the wheat, but if you can get them all to work together and a double crop in there quick enough, you might not only help your rotation, but do as well or better than corn and beans. So that's what we're looking at. But.
And then something that I'm pretty passionate about, because I've seen the value of it, is that farm business analysis program, and I try to promote that, but it's a big time investment gathering up that information. So you guys went through that with Diane Shoemaker and her team.
Yes, we did, and we went, and her special assistant for us was Trish Levering, and I hope she's going to come back again this year, but we put her through all kinds of bizarre numbers and things that she had to kind of get us to lock into and get figured out proper categories. But I think this has been around a long time, because I think I remember doing it in the late 70s, and I hadn't done it for a while. But I heard about this once again through the extension, this service, and they have a grant, and they are just tremendous, Diane and Trish. Giving you one-on-one time and help. And my son he's not big on going to meetings, but when he saw this, he said, we really need to, this is really going to help us focus in on our areas that need improvement. And we've already seen what we need to improve on and suggestions, and it has benchmarks where you can compare to other corn and bean farmers. And the care that you all give people for this is amazing. So I'm very grateful for it.
So was it very painful, or was it not too bad?
You have to ask Trish. I know it's more painful for her.
Well, yeah. But on your end, it wasn't so bad. I'm trying to, farmers out there interested.
Well, you're going to have to, the less careful records you keep, the more you're going to have to dig into those drawers and things. And you got to account for your for money spent in one year as opposed to the other year, and your income. And there's a lot of things you got to come up with categories, but that's the best way to do it, because that's the only way you find out And they try to help you as much as they can, and have great suggestions about where to go and look. And so.
Yeah. Did you learn anything from that just really shocked you about your operation?
Oh, we haven't gone over it as much as we should because we just actually finished in December. And it's time to start again. It's a continuous thing where you can build on that and see how you're doing over the years. But I think in our case, and I've got to look over some more, but we needed to do better in our salary department, actually. So maybe I've got to eat more peanut butter sandwiches. So I'm pretty good at making those. But anyway, But we do need to look over some categories. I can't answer that really well right now for you. But we've been talking about, let's get together and go over these areas that we need to focus on.
Yeah, I think that's a great way. We all have areas we can improve, and if you don't know where the most important areas or where there's the most room for improvement, it can be hard to make those decisions. This, I think, makes it a little bit more clear.
Yeah,
good point. Yeah.
And we did do a podcast on that, episode 22. If listeners, you're interested, go back and learn a little bit more about that, or farmprofitability.osu.edu, I think, is a website there. So, yeah, glad we were able to help you guys out with that.
That's wonderful, and just one of many services you guys get. Thank you.
So I guess kind of some of the more unique things that you've done that caught my attention, rehabilitating foxes on your farm.
Well, you wanted information. I just went.
No, I think it's cool.
Well, I had a period of time there in the 90s and all that I was able to go volunteer at the Ohio Wildlife Center, a nonprofit up in Columbus, and I wanted to learn more about wildlife and learn more about it so I could enjoy it on the farm and build up the habitat. So my special job, before they had an outdoor enclosure, which they have now up at their education facilities in Cook Road, I think it is, up near Shawnee Hills, I put up a 20 by 40 fence for getting orphan foxes and in the spring, and then we'd see them through the summer and then release them on the farm, natural habitat. So that was it was a pretty interesting. You had to keep them as wild as you could, because they wouldn't have survived or made out. So that was the object, to try to help nature along. I enjoyed it.
That's really interesting.
Really fun.
Well, Geoff, we really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us. I think it's really fascinating to learn more about all of the diversity in our farms across Ohio. So we really appreciate the time you've taken today.
Certainly welcome. Thank you.
Best of luck in 2020.
Thank you.
Hi listeners, just a note that I was referring to the Fallsville wildlife area when talking about that bobwhite quail habitat, which is actually in Highland County. So I wanted to clarify that for you.
Thanks for listening to the Agronomy and Farm Management Podcast. Join us again in 2 weeks for our next episode.